Thanks everyone for spending some time and tuning in tonight. This is the CMSA Town Hall for the U10s and U11 age groups. A bit of a unique age group within CMSA, and you're going to find out a little bit more why we feel like it's important to do some of the different things that we're doing, and to also shed some light on what some of those things are, and to really give you an expectation for what the next 6 months of footy is going to look like for yourself as a parent, yourself as a coach, but also your kids as well. So first, I'd like to welcome everyone. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, of the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. For those who may not have seen me before a few minutes ago on your screen, my name is Jordan Stewart. I'm the CMSA technical leader. My job is to worry about the players, the coaches, the referees, and everything that happens within the white lines, as well as everything that happens within the training environment, as well with clubs and coaches and players. So primarily focusing on the clubs, the coaches, and the players aspect, and then I've got some great support helping me out with the referees with those parts of my work portfolio. I've worked with players. It says U8 to university. It should probably say about U4 or U6, straight through to university aged players. I've worked at pretty well every level of the game in Alberta, which I'll show you, and I'm the former Alberta Soccer Association regional coach for Southern Alberta, and the Alberta Recs director. So my role there was primarily focused around developing the best players that we possibly could out of Alberta, to support districts in what their initiatives are, but also to advocate where Alberta soccer was going and what best practice was leading us to, and then also to support coach education, which was a enjoyable part of that role as well. I've got experience working in the grassroots clubs within Edmonton, and then into a professional academy that's no longer in existence, but FC Edmonton. I had the pleasure of being the U18s coach there. As I said, working with Alberta Soccer in youth national team development systems, colleges and universities, community outreach, and then right now with my role with Calgary Minor Soccer. So across the board, from top to bottom kind of thing within the game here in Alberta, and everything except for the full professional level within the CPL or the UWS currently. So I was initially brought on with CMSA to develop a technical plan for them, and to realign a lot of their match formats, and to investigate what best practice was and how Calgary Minor Soccer could implement it. This was back in the end of 2020. Apparently I must have written a decent technical plan, because the executive director at the time said, please come on with us and stay full time. So this is available on our website, but I'd like to give people a quick overview of kind of what it was and how it was guiding the organization and what we were trying to do from a technical sense. And it had 3 areas of emphasis, and it was govern, develop, and grow. You're going to see that repeated again in this next iteration of the technical plan that we're currently working on now. And you'll see little markers as to what's been completed and what's still ongoing. So you'll see things like the town halls that you're a part of tonight, evaluating our indoor game formats is still ongoing, and club consultations to improve their session delivery and training structure so that we can improve our retention and development of our young players. You'll also see some things that are delayed or just haven't been started yet, and things like skill center and designated player program, club implementation plan to be developed in 2023. We haven't gotten there yet. We've had some other fires to put out and projects to finish. That one just hasn't happened yet, but it is going to be implemented into 2024. You'll see other pieces around parent advisory councils and parent development series started and launched. We're really proud of some of the things that we've completed in terms of the SQS information and support that we've been giving to the clubs, collaborating with numerous referee associations to try and find best practice for referee retention and development here, and also some innovative pieces around bio-banding and female players in male leagues. And lastly, with the grow area, we've aimed to try and reduce the average travel time for matches. There'll be someone on the call that says there's still too much driving, and especially going into an indoor season when we have limited facilities to use, there's definitely going to be some driving involved throughout the winter. So these are things that we're trying to do. These are things that we're wanting to do, and you'll see pieces around how we're trying to engage in different ways with the membership in terms of an esports league. We had wanted to launch it at the beginning of this year. The timing wasn't quite right, but other ways to engage people in the game and to also grow the membership of CMSA. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to this, because this is really the reason why we all do what we do, and it's based around the player. And this is really an overview and a diagram of what that player pathway looks like in this country right now. You'll see the different layers, and you'll see arrows that move left and move right throughout the stages and throughout those boxes. Wanted to give people an accurate visual on who operates where and what things actually are. So CMSA will operate in stages 1, 2, and 3, which is active start, fundamentals, and learn to train. You'll also see us active in the soccer for life in the youth aspect, in the community area, and then also in the competitive area. So you'll see grassroots community and grassroots competitive, and that language used throughout some of our documentation as well. Then you'll see the ability to flow through into developmental leagues in terms of the AYSL for youth, and then further into Rex and other professional academy development programs like the new Cavalry one that's launched. I'll make sure that I add them to this diagram for the next one, and push up into youth national teams, national development centers for the girls, and then into professional pathways like Cavalry, the Whitecaps, and into senior national teams. For those players who don't have that kind of drive, don't have that ability, and also just don't have a little bit of luck on their side, you'll hopefully flow up into the Calgary United Soccer Association, which is the men's and co-ed leagues, and also our Calgary Women's Soccer Association. They operate in the community and competitive streams for Soccer for Life. And then for those who want a little bit more, there's the U Sports, the college level, NCAA, USL2 teams, UWS, and also League One Alberta that's been launched last year. It looks like a lot. I know that this is a lot to unbox. If you've got questions about the player pathway, how things operate, or how things work, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to have a conversation with you and help to understand. Oh, apologies. It's been a long day already. Every single season for the last few, we've started to develop what we call our CMSA program handbook. And what this is this is essentially a guide for our clubs to be opening up their registration with. So this gives them all the details that they're going to need in terms of league structures, player fees, post seasons, referees, etc., so that they can open up their registration. This resource is available on our website at calgaryminersoccer.com, and we'd encourage parents to go and have a quick view through that to then see, wait a minute, is this what I actually signed up for? Does this align with what my club has said? And is this similar to what my club is producing as well? From both a philosophical, from a language standpoint, but then also from an actual technical programming piece. So is it accurate? Is it aligned? I will let you do that homework a little bit. I must talk about the club licensing piece that's coming into Canada Soccer, but especially into Alberta here. The original deadline was May 1st of 2023. This deadline was communicated for over 2 years. And what we saw some clubs get in their SQS applications on time and some that haven't. What this has resulted in is resulted into a situation where some clubs, should they not finish up their SQS applications, will no longer be members of CMSA, and they will no longer be able to play in any of our leagues. There's certain coach standards and required training, and there's also some governance documents that have to be submitted by the clubs to ensure that what families and what players are getting is a quality experience, or at least has some minimum standards met to make sure that there's a quality experience. If you want more information about the SQS, again, happy to provide it, happy to chat with anyone about that. You'll see on your screen now a slide of kind of the levels of club licensing right now. What we have is SQS at the introductory level. We have an MA1, an MA2, and then a National Youth Club license. And most people view it as a hierarchy. I try to view it as a linear progression where there is no right, there is no wrong. What there are different standards and different things that organizations have achieved from a financial, from a governance, from an administrative, from an operational, and from a technical side that move them through the levels of licensing until they find a level of licensing that fits where they need to be. You'll see at the bottom of this screen the non-licensed clubs currently in Calgary. And what has to happen with them is they have to fill out their application, get it approved by the district, which is us, get it approved by the province, which is Alberta Soccer, and then finally get it approved through Canada Soccer to maintain their club license status and also maintain competition. So those ones at the bottom, if you're a part of one of those clubs, I would be asking them some questions now. And I would say, what is your plan to ensure that you complete your standards for quality soccer licensing and maintain membership within Calgary Minor Soccer? As I've said, there's some minimum coach standards associated with the SQS, and there's two kind of levels with that. There's modified safe sport roster, and then there's a full safe sport roster requirement. The modified is a lower standard of coach training than is the full safe sport roster requirement. And so we've gone with a slightly lower standard initially with our U3 to U11 programming within CMSA, with the aim of increasing that standard gradually over the next 3 to 4 years. You'll see a full safe sport requirement for U12 plus. What this has done is this has changed the way that clubs have operated a little bit, where they can't just put one person on all the rosters with that minimum coaching requirement or with the course that's needed. All coaches will need the required training to be eligible on the rosters. And I'm going to be sending out an email to all the clubs later on tonight or potentially tomorrow morning, talking about what that eligibility is again, and then also making sure that they're fully aware that the vast majority of their coaches likely are not eligible to start the season. This piece is around club accountability, and the clubs have to do what's right, not what's easy. And their willingness to adhere to basic standards are going to determine their longevity within the game here locally. What are those standards, you might ask, in terms of coach training? Well, these are the standards that are expected. And you'll see check marks, which are required for all team officials. These are coaches, assistant coaches, developmental coaches, the kit man, and also team managers. They must have a police clearance. They must have completed Respect in Sport. And then you'll see other aspects in terms of the required education for coaches and assistant coaches and developmental coaches, any part of the technical team. Those are the stars that are shown on there. And as you see for the U10 and U11 age group, it's really only the Learn to Train theory component, which is an online 90-minute to 2-hour course to be completed by coaches. You'll then also see some recommended coach training in terms of make ethical decisions and making headway. We recommend that coaches do those along with the practical session, which is the on-field coach education for Learn to Train, in preparation for U12. So there isn't a massive amount of education then and training to be done when they age advance in a year, and we can incrementally be increasing that coach training and coach standard along the way. Well, how can my coach participate? Well, that's a great question. Your coach can participate into one of these courses. You'll see that we haven't offered a ton for indoor, largely due to field availability, but also due to a bit of demand. You'll see that tonight's course had to be canceled with only 5 registrants wanting to improve their coaching that work with our youngest possible players. We could have housed 50 coaches. We had to actually cancel the course. The course last night with fundamentals have been moved into the October 24th because there wasn't enough demand for that course. Again, coaches working with our youngest players, the most vital age groups that we have, and there isn't a willingness to improve ourselves as coaches. You'll see other dates that are starting to fill up, which is good, and you'll see more of an interest, it seems like, at those Learn to Train in Soccer for Life age groups. I'm going to stop there for a second. I'm just going to check the Q&A and make sure that that's clean, which it is, and we'll get rolling again. We also prepared this within our team officials training handbook, and it's a bit of a roadmap that shows what steps and stages these coaches need to go through in order to be eligible under the modified Safe Sport roster and under the full Safe Sport roster. So for this night's presentation, you'll see in the gray box below, that's recommended training. Now, recommended is always good to have, and that's what we believe. And much of this training is still free, which we'll get into in a little bit. You'll see that gray box disappear for the full Safe Sport roster requirements. So a bit more coach education and training needs to be done for those older age groups. You likely would have gotten an email today that says the schedules are all live on CMSA, and then quickly followed by an email that said, oh, wait a minute, we've got to make a couple of last minute changes, and took them down and then repopulated them quite quickly. I wanted to give everyone an awareness of how the schedules are actually made. And so we've created this infographic for people to be aware of how these are made and how long this actually takes and the thought that goes into it. Is it perfect? Likely not. Does it fit your family's schedule perfectly? Definitely not. But what we've tried to do is be as thorough and equitable as possible in order to maintain a good soccer experience for everyone involved. So we start by having Tier 1 declarations come in. So the clubs submit their Tier 1 declarations to us, and we then start to piece the league together from that top downward. It gives us an idea of how many teams to expect, and it also gives us an idea for field entry. Then we get team entry from all the clubs, and this is where teams essentially say we will have 2 U12 Tier 2 teams here, we'll have this many developmental teams and this many Dev Plus teams. And they submit all of those on October the 2nd was the deadline this year for this indoor, I should say. Then we have our Club Connect, which is our league alignment, where we bring in all of the technical directors and club staff from around the city, and we sit down with them and go over league by league every single team that's in there. They then have the opportunity to have a look at what the league is going to be and use their knowledge of their players and the league to go, oof, I've actually entered them in the wrong spot there. We need to move them there, or we need to move them there. It also gives us an opportunity to come up with a collaborative solution to leagues that might not be very big and might be short on numbers of teams. We can then piece this together, and they walk away essentially knowing where their teams are going to be. Then we send it back out to them. We send it back out to them with that information. They verify it and they make any last minute changes. We then try and enter in all of these teams into preset play dates. This is more for outdoor most of the time, but it also is a little bit for indoor. And we compare that with all of the field permits that we have. Obviously, the field permits for indoor are places like Genesis, Calgary Soccer Center, the Macron Performance Center, Shoaldice Athletic Park, I believe it's the Encana Field, and then Calgary West Soccer Center. We really don't have a lot of choice in terms of facility, but we do have a vast majority of the field permits for them that we can then look to try and schedule on. Then Kim and Rachel in our office build the schedule, and they've been building this schedule for probably the last 15 days for probably 10 to 12 hours a day minimum. I believe they're up until 1 a.m. last night continuing to build the schedule and also to manipulate it to try and make sure that things are as close to done as possible. Then we publish the schedule, and obviously there's reschedules that need to happen when people go, oh, this tournament's on this weekend, I'd like to reschedule that game or move things around. So that's then the meticulous bit of fitting the jigsaw puzzle back together and also trying to make sure that we've got fields available to house those fields. Then we do it all over again. There was over 4,500 games scheduled this indoor season, and we saw a 16% increase in registration. We had forecasted a 5% increase, so you can imagine 16% increase, but there's no more available field inventory. So the field inventory stayed here, and we've tried to do that with it. So it's putting a strain on our system. So I'd encourage you, not that this is a political call, but to be advocating to city councillors, to municipal and provincial governments on the need for facilities for this game that continues to grow and expand and give our youth a chance to be physically active. Another one of our league-wide initiatives is around biobanding. And this is the process of grouping athletes on the basis of attributes associated with their growth and maturation rather than chronological age. Because children of the same age can vary considerably in biological maturation, with some individuals maturing in advance or delay of their peers. Now, that's a very technical definition. Essentially, two 9-year-olds or two 10-year-olds, one could be a giant and one could not be. We could have David and Goliath on the same pitch. So how do we find a good, meaningful, competitive environment for David and also for Goliath within our leagues? So we ask our technical directors to evaluate their players and to say, well, at this point in time, it might be better for this player to play in this age group, not playing down, not behind anyone else, just developmentally where you're growing and where your physical maturation is just a little bit behind your peers, and that's okay. So what we have them do is we have them fill out a form so that CMSA is aware of it, and then they connect with their fellow technical directors and opponents within that league to say, hey, we have two bio-banded players on this team. Our expectations is that clubs are not using this as a method to win games, not using this as a method to hoard players, but using this as a developmental tool to help do what's right for each player so that they've got a great experience in the game. The game in European countries is littered with players who have been bio-banded their whole life and ended up turning professional. You can look to players like James Ward-Prowse. You can even look to players like Gareth Bale in some instances that were bio-banded at certain ages and certain times because it was right for their development. There's clubs also in Europe that believe 15% of the time their players should play down an age group so that they develop leadership skills, so that they can learn how to dominate games, so that they can learn how to communicate with their teammates and help to lead and coach on the field. So there's multiple uses for this, and I'd encourage you, if your child has been bio-banded, to ask for those reasons, which the club is meant to be supplying you, but also to do some reading and some curiosity around the bio-banding initiative as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what our expectations are from a cultural standpoint for this year and what our conduct expectations are. And you'll see a picture on the screen, and it's really just a metaphor to say there's no point in wrestling with a pig because you're going to get covered in you know what, and the pig actually enjoys it. So if there's conduct maltreatments, if there's problems, just let us know about it. We want to make sure that this game is culturally a vibrant and exciting game to be a part of, and that there's also a culture that has a community feel around it, that it's not adversarial. Even though it's competitive and people want to win and people want to succeed, that there's a culture of acceptance and a culture of inclusion and a culture of community. And that we collectively, not just me on this call, but all of us, we're going to have to set the standard of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So I'd encourage you to reflect, think about, is your behavior acceptable for a youth sporting environment? Is it supportive? Is it encouraging? And are you able to be there for your child and the other children on both sides that are playing this beautiful game? Some other initiatives that we have going on. One of them is our Women and Girls in Soccer initiative, which is our Empower Her initiative. We're looking to attract, retain, and progress women and girls through the game. January 4th, we're going to have a female-only Learn to Train practical coach education session. October 21st, which is just passed, we hosted a female-only entry-level course for our referees. We saw a minimum of 20 new female referees, which is amazing. Very proud of these young women who are taking up refereeing and looking to get involved in that part of the game. And then also we're going to likely be doing a female-only Free Soccer Friday, which is a drop-in event, which I'll talk more about in just a moment. On the referee side, we've had extra entry-level courses for this indoor as we look to grow our referee pool to a place where we want to be able to offer 3 referee crews to all levels of 11-a-side play very quickly in the near future. And while that doesn't affect these age groups yet, this is the roadmap that we want to be held accountable to and that we want to be laying down for your children by the time they get into those age groups. We continued with Project Ref, which is a free program for any kids who are receiving Kids Sport funding. They can go and get their referee courses paid for, all of their gear paid for, and then also any upgrading that they choose to do in the near future as well. Kids Sport funds Calgary area soccer players to the tune of over $500,000 a year outside of Project Ref. So they're stepping up in an enormous way, and we are incredibly grateful to have Kids Sport be such a massive contributor to the game here in Calgary. We've also got the Teal Shirt campaign, which is likely something that you're going to see a lot of at this age group. The Teal Shirt campaign is for first-year referees like the one that you can see on your screen. They'll be wearing a shirt that on the back of it says first-year referee. This is an acknowledgement that they are brand new. It might be their first game ever. It might be their first time even blowing a whistle in front of 25 people. They are going to make mistakes. They are not going to referee at a World Cup final level. They do not have VAR, the video assistant replay and video assistant referee, to help them. What they have is a whistle and a 6-hour course on refereeing that they've gone to save up some pocket money to buy a car. Please be patient with them. Please encourage them. Please support them. These people are going to be vital to the game if we want to continue to make meaningful strides forward. Our referees are going to be incredible because without a referee, one of our parents is, and I would rather watch if I was a parent than referee. Wrapped up in that Teal Shirt campaign, we also provide mentorship for all of them. So they'll get 4 sessions per season with an older referee that has been approached and has been identified as someone who can positively contribute to the lives of younger people and young referees. So mentorship, we want to develop them. We want to help them grow. And also, we're going to be having a zero tolerance policy incoming for any referee abuse and for any maltreatment of our officials. The punishments are going to be very severe, and it's not going to be the silver bullet. Oh, pardon me. It's not going to be the silver bullet in terms of fixing all of the abuse issues, but we believe it can be a meaningful step forward. If there are coaches on the call, we have a ton of free education right now for you, all through the NCCP and through the locker. We have got access, and everyone's got access to basic mental skills, make ethical decisions, which is either a $45 or an $85 course that's going to be required for these age groups very shortly. We've got the planning a practice module and also teaching and learning. They're all fantastic. They're available online in the locker, except for make ethical decisions. You've got to book a place on that course, but they're free for this entire indoor season. So please take advantage of this free learning. Find a couple of hours here or there to educate yourself, to better your training environment, and to give the players a better soccer experience. I'd mentioned that I would be talking about the Free Soccer Friday events. These are drop-in soccer opportunities. in an unstructured environment. So essentially a no coaches, no adults allowed kind of environment. And really trying to connect the community of different ages, different demographics of people, different backgrounds, and just getting them together to play the game of soccer at a youth level. What research tells us is that having access to facilities in an unstructured way and having mixed age play is incredibly beneficial for elite player development. So players of all ages, of all races, of all ability levels will come out to these and play either mini games, and we want to encourage them to self-organize when they're there. We want to encourage them to go up and meet other kids and say, "Hi, my name is," and meet someone and ask if they can play, to develop advocating skills for themselves, to develop social skills, and to develop some life skills at a really early age to bring out better people from our environment as well. There's a QR code there if you're interested in getting involved and bringing your kid out to these. And listen, it'd be a great way to drop your son or daughter off or your child off and go and get some groceries or go and relax for an hour and a half while they play in a safe environment with a ton of other kids. The upcoming dates are November 3rd at the Calgary West Soccer Centre, November 10th at the Genesis Centre, and November 17th at the Calgary Soccer Centre. So we move it around the city, and it's the first 3 Fridays of each month, with a couple of months that we take off throughout the year, like December. So these will be the last 3 for this calendar year. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Everyone is probably bored to tears about what CMSA is doing and would much rather hear about what pertains to the U10s and 11s. There's just some questions that a colleague of mine has sent through. I'll address those at the end if I haven't addressed them throughout this presentation. U10s and 11s. They're at the stage 3 of long-term player development. So this document's starting to show a little bit of its age because it was introduced in about 2008, 2009. But it's still the bedrock really of our systems in Canada operate off of. You'll hear other sports call it LTAD, which is long-term athlete development. I'd ask you to please give it a read, especially this one pager about stage 3, which is where your children would be at, to really see a couple of things. Are we doing things properly? Is your club doing things properly? And what does it look like? That LTPD document has fueled Canada Soccer in terms of developing their grassroots standards. And these are things like match formats that they would like to see everyone in the country playing by, and certain rules and field sizes and such. With the U10s and 11s, you'll see that a game format of 7v7 is what's required in alignment with Canada Soccer's grassroots standards. You'll see the coaching qualifications there, which is a little bit out of date. This document needs to be revised based on the modified or full Safe Sport roster. And also things like maximum game durations and maximum game time per player per day. You'll also see things like restarts from sidelines as a pass in or dribble in. You'll see goal sizes of a 6x16 maximum. We are going with a 6x12 locally. And you'll see the ball sizes and referee or game leader requirements as well. The interesting pieces here that we're not aligned with right now are things like the retreat line. At these age groups locally, and we'll talk about this later, the retreat line is actually at the halfway line, not at the third. I'll explain why it's like that. And you'll also see that the game day format for this is festival format. A lot of you might have come out of the U7s to 9s and you've said this festival stuff is so Mickey Mouse, this isn't real soccer, this is the next thing. Well, the realities is Canada Soccer actually believes that this festival format should continue up until U12. This is something that we're going to be aligning to and having to align to eventually. But this is something that culturally right now is not a fit, but it's going to have to be a fit in the very near future. You'll also see other things like fair playing time for all players. And I would actually add on to that in terms of rotating positions for players. The way this shakes out locally is through our league structures in terms of developmental and developmental plus. Our goal with developmental is to have very regionalized play, have a shorter schedule, and have clubs place their house league teams here as well. We then ask our clubs at that league alignment, that club connect that I mentioned earlier in terms of making the schedule, we have them organize them into ones, twos, and threes so that we can have more ones and ones kind of ability teams playing against each other more often. We know that people want to be competitive. We know that they want a competitive game. And what competition means varies a little bit from player to player and person to person. But we know that the game isn't exactly as enjoyable as it could be when teams are either winning or losing 7, 8, 10-0. You'll then see Dev Plus, which is citywide play with a longer schedule. Now in indoor, we've standardized everything to have 14 games per team, and you'll see a randomized schedule to have those 14 games on your schedule. You'll also see a 7v7 format and goals of 6x12. Apologies. Yeah, we've kind of talked about that a little bit. Want to make sure that we have an understanding of what developmental and developmental plus definitions are. We've created a resource that's available on our YouTube channel that has our definition of the U10 and 11 developmental and developmental plus leagues. Developmental plus really is for the kids who absolutely love soccer. If you were to ask them, who are you? If it was a question to me, it would have been, hi, my name's Jordan and I'm a soccer player. It's tied to their identity. They absolutely love the game. They're obsessed with it. They go and bug you to go to Cavalry games and they're watching it on Fubo or DAZN. They can't get enough of the game. They're looking for probably a more full-time program and more soccer activity and more soccer contacts per week. Whereas the developmental stream, maybe they love a variety of activities and their family schedule doesn't allow for all of that that hardened and numerous soccer activities per week. They might want a more part-time program and they might want just less activities and soccer contacts per week. You'll notice one common thing. There is absolutely nothing to do with ability to differentiate either one of these. So I'd encourage you, if your club has held evaluations and said, oh, you're good, you're in developmental plus, and you're awful, you're in developmental, to start asking them some more pointed questions or send them our way, and I would be more than happy to have a conversation with them. We'd also like to make sure that everyone's aware of some of the lopsided game strategies that we've implemented within these leagues. Again, there's a video resource on our YouTube explaining all of these, but as an overview, one of them, you could call it a power play initiative. We call it the 4-up, 1-up, that if a team is behind by 4 goals or more, they have the option to add an extra player. It's not disrespectful. It's adding the appropriate level of challenge for everyone at the game and to make sure that these kids have a meaningful soccer experience. It does us no good, and it's an absolute waste of everyone's time if those coaches and those players and those parents don't see the benefits of it and culturally have a hard time saying, yeah, you know what, we'll put an extra player on, no problem. Yeah, our team needs a bit of help today. That's okay to admit, because if this was recess, they might play 8v12. They might play 15v6. So can we give the game back to the kids and make sure that they have strategies that can help them enjoy the game in a meaningful way? There's also the option to mix up the teams completely, where the coaches can get together and mix up their squads if it's not working out, and to have a more meaningful experience within the game. Could imagine if I had a more developmentally advanced team than my opponent, that I would want my strikers playing against my defenders in that game, so they have a useful and meaningful time at that soccer activity that week. There's also the opportunity to swap goalkeepers, where maybe one team is in possession a lot more and that goalkeeper is working on their feet and in possession skills, while the other goalkeeper might be working on a lot of shot stopping and rebound control. The goalkeepers then can swap if they want and still have a different developmental outcome to the game than they would have previously. Our field standards for these age groups, we are standardizing all of this in terms of a 30 by 50. Someone's going to pace it out at Calgary West or Macron or something and go, this isn't 30 by 50, or you're going to do it at the soccer center. And I'm going to say you're right. Soccer center is actually 28 by 53, very close. Calgary West is 32 by 53, and Macron is 32 by about 50. So we're right and around there. The match time will all be two 25-minute halves. The goal size, again, we've talked about, and the ball size will be size 4. Now into the really fun stuff in terms of the retreat lines, the dribble ins, and the offsides, and what you're going to see on the field on a daily basis. And this all shakes down through the modified laws of the game. So our pre-game procedure will look a little different as well. You're going to see the home team sit on the right-hand side benches when they're facing the field. So walk up, home team, go to the right. Away team, go to the left. Really simple. You'll see teams start on the side of the field that their bench is on for their first half. No need to flip a coin. No need to call captains. No need to determine what side of the field we're starting on, because there's really no advantage playing in an indoor facility. The away team will always start with the kickoff, and in the second half of the game, the teams will change sides and attack the opposite side, like a typical game would happen. We're putting things like this into place to shave off minutes per game so that players have a little bit of extra warm-up time, so that referees have a little bit of extra time to do their administrative duties from the game before, and so that we can make sure that the players get more ball contacts every time they step on the field. Just efficiencies. We know that young referees who have been trained to call teams in, flip a coin, will struggle with this. So if you see them not following this procedure and you happen to be on a bench, just refer them to the modified laws of the game and just say, hey, I don't know if we're supposed to be doing this at this age. It's totally fine that you are, but give that another read over. And then maybe shoot us an email so we can connect with that referee and make sure that they know the proper procedure. You'll also see things like a dribble in, which I'll get into. You'll see indirect free kicks only outside of a penalty kick. You'll see the U10s being able to sub on the fly, so not at stoppages. Players can come off and go on at will. And you'll see U11 have proper subs at stoppages. And then lastly, you're going to see a retreat line, which we'll talk about. Actually, I'll stop there for 2 seconds and see if there's any questions in the Q&A. None yet. It's a quiet crew tonight. No questions yet. So we just want to crush this and then get back to Survivor or whatever other Beckham documentary we're watching. So the retreat line. Why do we need a retreat line? Well, we know that the game is ever evolving, and it means that we've got to prepare players for the future game, not the game that they see on TV today. What does the future game look like? And what we know, or what we can assume maybe, is that modern and potentially future styles of the game will revolve around maintaining possession of the ball with coordinated build-up from the goalkeeper. You'll see this style from Brighton, from Man City, from Arsenal, from Barcelona. All of the top teams and the innovators within the game are innovating in a possession style. And in the future game, we believe every player is going to be required to make appropriate decisions based on numerous cues from the match, such as where is the space, where are my teammates, where are the opponents, where is the ball, where is pressure coming from, all while having the ability to maintain possession through the thirds of the field under consistent pressure. We know the game is going to get faster and more athletic, and teams are going to become more savvy in terms of applying pressure. And what we also know is that our approach has to be centered around a four-corner model of player development. If this is the first time you've heard of a four-corner model, this is likely a coaching concept to look at the whole person and whole player and develop that whole person, not just from a technical standpoint, a skills standpoint, or a tactical, but also from a mental, social, and emotional, and then also a physical aspect as well. And what we believe strongly is that the mental and social and emotional corner needs to be the focus and the bedrock and the pillar that then fuels all of the actions from a technical, tactical, and physical sense. Because if we want participation, progression, and performance within the game locally, we need to acknowledge that mental, social, emotional piece and the culture that surrounds us in the game here. And what the retreat line is going to give us from a four-corner model is up on your screen now. Again, starting with that mental, social, emotional, we want to improve decision-making and risk assessment skills, their awareness and vision, their self-confidence, their team play and cooperation, and the ability to learn different roles and strategies. The technical, you can likely read most of these, improved ability for passing and receiving the ball on the half turn, to play penetrating passes, which eliminates opponents and breaks lines, and to improve the body orientation when receiving the ball so that I can play to someone else, I can play forward, and I can see as much of the field as possible. We want to improve the awareness of gaps and spaces from a tactical sense and improve the coordinated pressing from a defensive side. And then from a physical, improve their speed of play, their agility, balance, and coordination, and their hip flexor rotation by being able to receive, open up, and to be able to pivot and rotate. The Scottish FA did a study on the retreat line. They implemented it. And what you'll see here is when the retreat line was used at the U9 level, so just a little younger than these, less than 3% of the time. Sorry, am I reading this incorrectly? Less than 3 passes when the retreat line was used. Happened 6 when not less than 3 passes happen 89% of the time. So more times we weren't able to play a possession style. Passes, and also then at the U11 age group as well, which is right where we are, you'll see the exact same outcomes as well as the U9s. Then the outcome of that possession sequence, if the first pass is long from the retreat line, that it resulted in less than 3 passes was 84% of the time. So if we play long that first time, we aren't keeping possession. But if we play short, we have a chance, a far greater chance to play short, play through the thirds, and build up play. Some of the same studies were done in New Zealand as well in terms of playing through the thirds of the pitch, and only 20% of long goal kicks were successful, resulting in teammate and controlled possession in the middle third of the pitch. No good playing long, especially if we know that the future style of game is going to be reliant on possessing the ball. An increase in controlled possession was 52% increase in the midfield areas, occurred after playing out of the back. And there's actually an increase in playing out of the back, logically, of course, when the retreat line's in place from 23% of the time to 76% of the time. From a defensive lens, teams were able to regain defensive positions 94% of the time. So get coordinated and then go and press in a coordinated manner, which is what the modern and future game is going to require teams to be even better than they are at now. And then they did a qualitative and quantitative kind of survey as well with coaches and players. And you can see overall, very positive feedback around the retreat line. So what is the retreat line? I'm going to blast through this and give you an example so that you've all got a knowledge of what it is, how it works, if this is your first time hearing about it. If you want additional info, you see the little computer at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We've developed a resource on our YouTube explaining what the retreat line is. So at any moment, you can go back, give that a watch, give it a refresh, show it to your kids, heck, even show it to your coaches if they're unsure about what it is. But what it is say that we've got a goal kick. Strikers shot the ball out of bounds over the end line. The red team would then have to drop behind the retreat line for this goalkeeper in this instance to take the goal kick. Now, the red team is not allowed to enter that half of the field until the ball leaves the penalty area or is touched by one of that goalkeeper's teammates. They can then advance and go and look to win the ball back. Say that there's a free kick to the defending team inside their penalty area. So foul on the red team there. It'd be an indirect free kick. Again, the red team would have to drop behind that retreat line. And then as the ball is played out of the penalty area or a teammate touches it, that red team can then look to go and press and try and win the ball back. Hope that makes sense to everyone. Other options for the goal kick, again, ball is played wide of the goal over the end line. Red team is behind their retreat line, but you'll see right now that it's actually on to play long and direct, given this situation for this blue player. We're not saying that you can't play long. In fact, that's a cue that a goalkeeper needs to recognize if that's the available option. And we also need to work on our goalkeepers passing over range, especially in these indoor months when we don't typically have a lot of long passes. This is a key skill for goalkeepers in both the modern and it's going to be in the future game in terms of in possession skills. Variety and lengths of passes is going to have to be a key component of how they play the game. So you can play direct, but what you'll see here is a very different situation where that blue player is arguably 1v2 or maybe even 1v3. In this instance, it'd be important for us as coaches or for parents to recognize, wait a minute, it's not on to play long. The cue isn't there. Can we maintain possession and then invite the other team to press? An infraction would look like this. So if the retreat line's not done appropriately, it would look something like this. The red team hasn't all gotten behind the retreat line. Ball has been played. Obviously, it's a foul. We would expect our new and young referees to be blowing their whistle, to be moving that red team back, and to be restarting play. I'd like to also speak to the dribble in, which is a variation of a restart that is taking the place of a throw in. So what the dribble in is you'll see a player at the sideline, put the ball on the sideline, much the same as what futsal kind of looks like. And they're able to dribble the ball into the field and into play. It's resulting in quicker restarts for our games as opposed to players throwing the ball in. It's resulting in less heading within the game. And it's also increasing the number of ball contacts and 1v1 opportunities within a game so that our players develop more creativity and they're more comfortable on the ball. The incorrect method would be this. Player just passes the ball in without dribbling it in. Once again, just knocks it in. We would expect our referee to blow their whistle and to restart play. Another version of the incorrect dribble in would be scoring a goal. It is an indirect occurrence within the game, which is the same as the throw-in. You can't throw the ball into the goal, so it's treated the same way. You'd expect a foul to be blown and the ball to be restarted. And lastly, if the opponent player is too close to that player who's about to dribble the ball in, well, we would expect the referee to blow their whistle or to come over and have a word with that blue opponent and back them up a span of 3 meters. Now, some technical directors and coaches have said, Jordan, the dribble in is great, works really well. But what we find is that opponent is ready to press as soon as that ball is touched and our player gets closed down really quickly. To which I'm saying, well, why is that player that's dribbling the ball in taking their first touch towards an opponent? Why wouldn't they then take their first touch in this direction and be able to have an extra bit of time on the ball and be able to play and do whatever they wanted and shield the ball and turn and use feints and creativity to spin that player potentially, or to play and then receive so they can play forward and dictate the game. So it's about developing the tactical awareness as well for the player. It's not just some funny business that we've instituted. It's in alignment with Canada Soccer's grassroots standards and something that we believe in that's going to help develop these players. If and when you have games at the Calgary Soccer Center or Genesis Center, what you're going to see is a field that's laid out like this. You're going to see a boarded field. You're going to see some black markings on the field. Now, the Genesis Center, we're going over there tomorrow to have it painted. Can't guarantee the line's going to be black. I'm thinking it's either going to be white or yellow, but you're going to see a penalty area in black, you're going to see an end line, and you're going to see a goal sitting in front of that goal that's carved into the wall. This is what those 7-a-side fields are going to look like within those boarded fields. So expect that, and expect the rules to be administered as well within that kind of field. I'd also like to speak to everyone tonight about what the player fees are. Oftentimes we constantly get emails, or oftentimes we constantly, those are two interesting words. Oftentimes we get in emails asking questions about where does all the money go? Where do our player fees go? Well, this is the CMSA fee that we charge the club per player for indoor soccer. Out of that $205 for U10s or $215 for the U11s, $24 of that goes straight to Alberta Soccer. So what that leaves us with is $181 or $191, and a price per match day for all the players across 14 match days of $12.93 or $13.64. And you're going to probably ask, well, where does all of that money go and what does it actually pay for? Well, what it does is the majority of those fees go to actually booking fields, paying our referees, and other league-related expenses. Someone's going to say, well, other league-related expenses, surely that's the salaries of all of the people at CMSA. Well, not entirely true. Out of that as well, there's also a facility fund contribution so that we can continue to upgrade our current facilities, but also invest in new facilities for future players and for current players within the game. There's also a piece that goes back into Kidsport, because without their generous donations of over $500,000 a year to help kids play soccer, the game would not be what it is. So we help to fund Kidsport as well through a small donation. As I've said, Alberta Soccer and Canada Soccer take a portion of those fees, and then a small portion helps to pay for the CMSA staff to ensure that Calgary Soccer is efficiently run and continues to innovate. And when I say efficiently run, I mean as efficiently as possible. What will happen this year is players will get injured at some point, either through consequence, either through accidents, or any other method. So if or when an injury happens, you must fill out the form on Alberta Soccer's website within the first 30 days of that injury. Now, what I've seen in the past is people think, oh, this one's not too bad. It's just a rolled ankle or something. And then they're in physio and they're needing braces and they're needing all of these other things months down the line. And they haven't filled out this form. And then they're not able to access the insurance funds. It's encouraged that you use your personal insurance first, and Alberta Soccer will commence after that personal insurance runs out. And we know that physio and rehab expenses add up very quickly and exhaust that personal insurance very fast. So please fill out those forms within the first 30 days of injuries and make sure that that you've got access to what you're paying for at the end of the day. I'm going to have a quick pause. Give me 1 sec and try and get back into the Q&A. Doesn't look like anyone has asked any questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to review quickly the pre-submitted questions from people. Just interested in knowing the changes. Well, I hope I've covered that. The second question here was on positional. It's a bit of a philosophical question. It's on positional rotation versus focusing on solely developing players in a specific position. So I'll start with that. There's absolutely no evidence that shows if we play a player as a right back right now that they're going to become an elite right back at some point or play as a right back for the rest of their life. What we know is these kids are still learning the game. What we know is these kids need to be challenged. These kids need to be made sure that they're supported. And that means from a coaching standpoint, but also a parental standpoint in a psychologically safe environment. So these players should be rotating positions, especially through a goalkeeper position where you will see in a few years at older age groups, the dire need for goalkeepers in some divisions. And when we tend to pigeonhole kids as a goalkeeper early on, they either lose interest, they get sick of giving up lots of goals, their bodies get worn down, or they just want to try playing out. And it's up to us as adults to make sure that we facilitate the children's game. We don't control the children's game. So, in terms of rotating positions, highly recommended. Um, this is not a specialization period within their development, and they need to be exposed to different stimulus and different challenges within the game. There's a question around playing time and game time guidelines for fair and equal play. It's hard to develop a guideline for that. What we say is that playing time should be fair and equitable. What your team decides, and when I say team, you and the players, if you're the coach, decide is equitable and fair for the team along the values and expectations of that team, is how I would evaluate playing time and how that gets allocated. In my opinion, we don't know who's going to become excellent. We don't know who's struggling at home unless we ask the questions of that. And we also don't know who's going to end up playing the game in 10 years from now. So the best chances we have is to give equitable playing time. And if you determine and your team determines that that's based on attendance and attitude at practices, if that's based on, communication and support for teammates, whatever the criteria it is, make sure that it's widely explained and widely known so that people know what they're signing up for and know what they're getting involved with at the end of the day in terms of playing time. Talk as well about, who should start or finish games. It goes back to that playing time piece. All players should be given the chance to start games. All players should be given the chance to finish games. All players should be given the chance to try and get a tying goal in a game. If it's 1-0, can you put on some players that might not have that chance later in life and give them a developmental experience, give them a little bit of pressure, support them through that pressure, have a good team culture that win, lose, draw, we support each other no matter who is on the field or whose mistake it was or whose success it was. It's shared camaraderie and shared success. Another question in terms of, can you speak to the 3 groups within the Dev Plus age grouping? Is it just a random grouping, or will there be a shift mid-season based on skill levels, etc.? Thank you. The 3 groups are determined by our club technical directors. They'll sit down, they'll analyze their group, and they'll say, yeah, 1, they're developmentally advanced compared to the peer group at that age. 2, they're right and around that peer group. Or 3, they're maybe a little bit less advanced than their peer group, or maybe newer to the game. Not a problem. It's just where they're at that point. There's no random groupings. We're not trying to randomize things, so to speak. And then the question about, will there be a shift mid-season? The only time that we really look to shift things is if there's a massive problem. There is a tier movement deadline within all of our leagues where if there is a team that's not having a good developmental experience and not enjoying their games, that will look to swap with a team in another age group or potentially in another grouping. But what I want to talk about as well within this is that there's open rosters available for all of the U10s and U11s. So you can imagine that I'm sure all of the clubs have said, well, here's team A, team B, team C, whereas really they should be looking at it as one group of players that then gets a match per week. And they can go from this team to that team freely. And it's the club's job to make sure that they're determining what game is going to be appropriate for that player for that week. We know that that's a difficult challenge for our clubs. We know that that's a different workflow for them and their staff and maybe their volunteer coaches as well. But it's where the game is moving, and it's about putting the individual first rather than trying to make it all about team performance, keeping a team together, etc. I hope the next question is around clarification of development plus and development teams. I hope I've done that. If I haven't, please populate the Q&A if you're on this. This next question says, will U11 tier 1, well, there is no U11 tier 1s. or Tier A, so I don't know what that is. Team play Tier 1 or Tier 2 teams. Well, there's no tiers in that. From other clubs to make it really competitive and not play Tier 3 or 4 teams. Last indoor was a real disappointment, both for the boys' development and for parents. Yeah, it's interesting. Everyone seems to think that you need to play against top level players at 10 or 9 years old um, to have development happen. And I'd like for you to think briefly around how many soccer contacts per week your coaches and club has with the player compared to how many soccer contacts per week they play in a game. The development happens on the training pitch with good coaches in good environments, with good spirit in the group. That's where development happens. The test is at the game every week. Now, is it a good test if teams are mismatched grossly and are unwilling to adopt any of those three strategies for lopsided games? Well, no, it might not be optimum. It's then up to the club and it's up to us, but it's up to the club first to be managing those rosters through the open roster system, to be moving players around so that even if there's two groups that are in the two grouping per se, that if one is more developmentally advanced at that period of time than the other, that that club doesn't send those players to that game, that they manage that game appropriately for the benefit of all of the players. Then it comes to CMSA as well in terms of how we manage it from a league management perspective. And we've implemented those ones, twos, threes to try and tighter group those groups of players. Someone says, getting up to speed on being a team manager for U10 indoor developmental plus track. Help with game sheets. Ask your coaches how you can support them. Get your CPIC done. Do your respect in sport course, and just be a great adult role model for the kids. That's about all it is. And have fun. Have some enthusiasm and enjoyment for a team manager. I'm sure there's about 1,000 other things that I've missed. But I want to say thank you for volunteering and for stepping up because it's a necessary function for a lot of these teams. But within the team officials handbook that's on our website, we're going to be updating that tomorrow with some of those managerial roles as well. So please check back tomorrow and give that a look. Question around how are keepers assigned, chosen, and developed? It's a great question. Great question. I think this varies from club to club. I could give you a massive generalization, which isn't going to encompass all of the ways keepers are assigned, chosen, or developed. But what typically happens is a child shows an affinity towards playing in goal. They then get designated as the team's goalkeeper and typically don't leave the sticks very often. I've already kind of alluded to it, and I think I've said it already tonight, that likely it's not best developmental practice to be early sport specializing and early positionally specializing like that. The modern and future goalkeeper is going to need to use their feet. They're going to need to have great vision and awareness. They're going to have excellent leadership and communication skills. They're going to have to deal with adversity, to deal with pressure. Why not play them as a central midfielder here and there? Why not play them as a defender? Why not play them up front and have them score a few goals and fill their cup a little bit after they get scored on all year long? So how are they assigned and chosen? Well, maybe the child has an affinity towards it. Maybe they're just the worst player on the team and the only place for them is to play in goal because they're not a liability in possession or defensively out on the field. These are the realities. In terms of how they're developed, well, there's a myriad of ways of people trying to sell development. I would encourage you to look into perception action coupling. I'd encourage you to look into what good training environments look like and what good coaching environments look like in terms of being physically and psychologically safe, but also around coaches that can paint realistic pictures that players are going to see in the game and give them a good technical foundation to be able to solve problems and execute decisions in that game. Yeah, there's a lot to unbox around the development piece within goalkeepers. I'm not an expert goalkeeper trainer or developer, but what I would say is if goalkeeping training revolves purely around someone volleying a ball out of their hands at a goalkeeper, I would say find another goalkeeper trainer that is more integrated within the team training environment, and is able to help out within that environment. Um, This one says it's our first season with soccer as such. We don't know what we're assumed to already know coming in at this higher age group. First off, welcome. Thank you for joining soccer. Hopefully tonight's been really informative. I'll give you an email at the end here that just kind of outline or that gives you an opportunity to reach out to us if you've got any questions. Obviously, reach out to your club first, and they should be able to give you some great guidance and such. But you can also reach out to us at any time. Other one here, I'm completely new to indoor soccer. Is there lots of fundraising and tournaments? That's totally up to your team and what your team decides on doing. Each team is unique and different. We don't put any sort of limit or cap on tournaments or fundraising goals or anything like that. So that's team specific. And last question that I see here was, has CMSA given any consideration to moving the deadlines? Give me one sec. I'll just change it to here. Has CMSA given any consideration to moving the deadlines for club team entries earlier to provide more notice to parents/players about the schedule? The developmental stream is marketed as a more recreational type option for players who participate in other activities outside of soccer. However, with the current scheduling process and timelines, it's near impossible to register kids in other activities without knowing the practice and game schedule. We would love to be able to give people a schedule in the middle of the summer, typically when clubs open up their registration. But here's how the registration process works within our game. Clubs open up their registration, say midsummer. They solicit registrations. We have absolutely no idea how many teams they're going to have, how many players have registered, or how many coaches they have. We don't actually have that information until late September. In order for us to be able to produce a schedule earlier, we would likely have to put a cap on the number of teams and players that we were able to have. We would then have to have a lottery system with our clubs to essentially draw for who gets to be involved and who gets teams. And then those players who have registered, who already know what the schedule that's been pre-populated based on a set number of teams, they would be in by virtue of lottery. We know that that is ultra efficient. We know that it is going to result in some people in and some people out. But we want to operate under principles that we are an accessible and inclusive game. And I think our clubs do as well. So by doing that, we would need to have indoor registration wrapped up by midsummer, likely by August. So then those schedules can be prepared in August and then sent out at the beginning of September for an end of October kind of start. I don't know if that's going to give us good outcomes. It's never been tried before. Maybe it's something that we take away from this call and we discuss internally and discuss with our clubs to see if that's a direction that they would like to move. So could be a suggestion. I see that there's still a few people that have stuck it out and gone the distance so far with us. So thank you. Really appreciate that. It's nice to see. If there are any questions from anyone who's still on the call, like feel free to populate them in that Q&A section. I've really only got a couple of other bits left for you here, and then we can be on our way for tonight. So final kind of message is really the indoor season it's already kind of started with preseason training, but it really starts now. And this is a video that we feel encapsulates what starts now in terms of our leagues. So really our community starts now, and our community of being collaborative and supportive and putting players and coaches and referees first starts now. It starts now to give players a fantastic experience in the game. It starts now to give them a great option for physical activity, and it starts now for us to come together and to continue moving this game forward and pushing it to places that it's never been here locally. So I want to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight. I know you could be anywhere in the world doing anything, and you've chosen to make time for this tonight. So I hope that I've provided you great value. I've hoped that we can continue the dialogue, and I really hope that you enjoy yourselves this indoor season. There's never been a better time of being a part of the game on the kind of eve of a 2026 home World Cup that these kids will continue to be inspired by both our men's and women's national team, by the great run that our local professional team is having, by the opportunity of a Project 8 women's professional team within our city, and really with a vibrant and diverse and growing grassroots soccer community that I'm inspired by daily and that I continue to work very hard to produce great results for. So thank you. If you would like to reach out and contact us, you can do so at info@calgaryminorsoccer.com. Our phone number is listed there, and all of our social medias accounts are listed there at the bottom of the screen as well. I should add the TikTok one as well. Someone's going to hammer me tomorrow for not having the TikTok one on there, but yeah, that's a great way of finding information and interacting with us as well. I leave every presentation with that image on the left, and how if we can continue to continue to pull the game in a similar direction, we're going to make progress faster, as opposed to all of us going off on our own direction and all of us trying to do our own thing. So let's continue to operate on that right-hand side of that image, as opposed to operating on that left-hand side of the image. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone, and I hope you have a great evening. I hope that you found this informative, and I wish you, your coaches, all of our young referees, and of course our young players, nothing but the best for this indoor season. So thank you again, and if you need to, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to continue the discussion with you. Have a great night. Thanks so much.